children, a big, loving, warm welcome to our very own channel, Ammu&You, where Ammu is ever ready with wonderful stories to narrate to you. Today, the story that I have for you is a story by an amazing author, Ruskin Bond. The story, The Angry River. It's a wonderful, wonderful story and written so beautifully by this amazing author. Let's hear it. The Angry River. In the middle of the big river, the river that begins in the mountains and ends in the sea, was a small island. A small hut stood there, a mud-walled hut with a sloping thatched roof, and 3 of the walls made of mud, and the 4th one was a rock. In the middle of the island stood a peepul tree, the only tree there, old and strong. An old man sat beneath it, mending a fishing net. His only son had gone to work in a factory in a city, nearly 100 miles away from that place. He had a grandchild, a girl named Sita. Sita had lost her mother when she was very small. Grandmother had taught her all the things that a girl should know, but neither of her grandparents could read or write. And so our Sita too couldn't read or write either. Grandmother had been ill for 3 days and had become very weak. She could not eat anything. She could just have sips of liquid. Sita was looking after her. When grandmother slept off, Sita came out from her hut to grandfather. Tomorrow, I will take your grandmother to the hospital at Shahganj. You may be on your own for a few days, child, said grandfather. Sita nodded gravely. She was not afraid of being alone, but she did not like the look of the river all around. Its level had risen. Grandfather, if the river rises, what will I do? You will keep to the high ground, child. What happens when the water comes to the hut? Then climb into the peepul tree. It is a very strong tree. It will not fall, and the water cannot rise higher than the tree, child. And the goats, grandfather, what do I do with them? I will be taking them with me, Sita. I may have to sell them to pay for good food and medicines for your grandmother. Grandfather patted her head lovingly. Towards the evening, it had begun to rain again. Sita moved about in the pouring rain, black hair streaming across her face, black eyes, and she was so used to walking into the rains that the rains actually did not bother her at all. Only that these rains had a different feel and look. There was a scar on her thigh. When she was very small, visiting her mother's village, a hyena had entered the house, fastened on its leg. It had tried to drag her away. Her screams had roused the villagers, and the hyena had run off. The scar remained. It rained all night. Sita could not sleep. Her grandparents had dozed off and they had a lantern hung up just to feel secure. Sita had a rag doll that she had made out of grandmother's old torn clothes. She kept the doll by her side every night. Though her grandparents were always ready to talk with her, but Sita would like to share her secrets with this doll. Though the secrets were mostly made up, and she made them up just for the fun of it. She had named her doll Mamta. The night passed. The sun was just coming up when grandfather pushed off the boat with Sita's grandmother lying there, unable to even speak. She kept looking at Sita standing at the shore. She had a hand raised in a sort of blessing. The boat bobbed about on the water, getting smaller and smaller and smaller until it was just a speck on the broad river. Sita was now alone on the island. She carried on with her daily chores, sweeping her hut with a broom, making some peas and onion for herself to eat. She had little goat's milk in a tumbler. She drank it, thinking perhaps this was the last of the goat's milk that she could ever have, because the goats had been taken away by grandfather to be sold off in return for some money. Thunder rolled down the hills, boom, boom, boom. She went out, and the river looked much wider now. She quickly climbed into the tree to get a better view. She gazed upstream. There was water everywhere. A drowned buffalo floated by with a fast current. She saw planks of wood, small trees and bushes, a wooden bedstead floating past the island. These were all unusual things that she had seen floating in the river. She went inside the hut. She took Mamta in her arms and began praying for the rains to stop. She prayed for the safety of her grandparents as well. Then she suddenly started packing the few things that she could see around: her grandfather's hookah that belonged to his father, one or two clothes of her grandmother, few utensils, some spices, and some other things that she thought of some value. She packed all of them and put them into a trunk so that they are not washed away in water. And suddenly, to her horror, she realized she was walking about on a watery floor. She had been so busy with her work that she never realized that the water had already swept inside her heart. Sita now was filled with panic. She ran out to the peepul tree. She climbed swiftly into its strong arms and sort of felt a bit safe. She was glad that she had hurried. Looking down, she saw the hut was now surrounded by water. She had never seen it like this before. Would the river rise still higher? She thought. The water was rising rapidly now. The most unusual things went by on the water. An aluminium kettle, an empty cigarette pack, a cane chair, a tin of tooth powder, a wooden slipper, a plastic doll. Doll? Mamta, my poor doll. She was reminded of it. She moved up to the higher branches of the peepul tree. And there she saw a jet black crow settled in its nest, an untidy platform of twigs wedged in the fork of a branch. In the nest lay blue-green speckled eggs. The crow sat on them and cawed disconsolatedly. The tree shook in the wind and rain. It felt like an earthquake tremor to Sita. The river was very, very angry, like a wild beast, a dragon on a rampage. The tall old peepul tree groaned. Its roots were rapidly losing their hold. The tree seemed to be ready to join the river. And the tree moved into the main current of the river, swinging Sita from side to side. Her feet were in the water, but she clung tenaciously to the branch. Sita was frightened. The crow kept flying around the tree too. The nest fell into the water, and Sita saw the eggs go one by one into the water. Sita felt tired. Her arms were aching, for she had to cling tightly to her branch. Then she heard someone calling. She looked around, and could she see a boat approaching the tree? Yes, a boy was there in the boat, holding out a hand for her. Now Sita quickly managed to grab the hand and jumped on to the boat of that little boy. The boy held her hand and safely helped her into the boat beside him. The little boat moved swiftly down the river with the current. The current was too strong. The big tree was left far, far behind. Sita would never see it again, she thought. She never had imagined that she would never ever see the strong peepul tree, always that stood there majestically. A small boat on a big river, bobbing up and down. The boy wore only a loin cloth. A sheathed knife was knotted into his waistband. He felt under the seat with one of his free hands, and where there was a small basket, he produced 2 mangoes and gave one to Sita. Sita was very hungry. Seeing the mango, she realized how very hungry she was. Both of them bit deep into the ripe, fleshy mangoes. Truly, this was the nectar of the gods. My name is Krishan, said the boy. Sita had never, ever had such tasty mango before. My name is Sita. Yes, I have seen you from far sometime in the village, said the boy. In the evening, He pulled the boat away from the main current, and they were now in a forest, rowing between the evergreens. He tied the boat to a sturdy toon tree and rested the night there in the boat. The boy said, "You may have some sleep. I am awake." After a while, the boy sat there playing his flute. Sita was mesmerized by the sweetest music pouring out from it. The morning sun fell on them and feasted on the last 2 mangoes left on the boat. The children, they were so hungry. They moved on the boat again and shortly saw a village in the distance. Sita was so anxious to find her grandparents. What had happened to my grandmother? Could she reach the hospital? Krishna took her near the village in that boat and dropped her there. Sita was so anxious to find her grandfather. The boy dropped her there, promising to see her again soon. Sita inquired of the route to Shahganj and took a bullock cart ride that led there. It was a few hours of journey. And suddenly, after reaching Shahganj, she saw her grandfather walking past, looking straight ahead. He had not recognized Sita, who was absolutely a disheveled figure. Sita clasped him from the waist. "Sita!" Grandfather cried. "How worried I have been for you, my child." And grandfather hugged her. "Is grandmother all right?" The dazed look in the old man's eyes told her that her grandmother was no longer there. She realized that her shoulders would be there to support her grandfather henceforth. She held back on her tears, clung to her grandfather, and shortly they returned to the island after a few days. Grandfather could hardly believe his eyes at the tree having disappeared. The peepul tree gone. They started building a new mud hut all over again. It took some days, but life started again. They built their hut. They started growing some vegetables in a vegetable patch. Sita had the mango seed with her. She planted the mango seed on the ground, hoping to have a big mango tree one day, laden with mango fruits. And she and her grandfather could just pluck them and eat them to their heart's content. One day, while she was going around, she suddenly heard a flute playing. She could not mistake it. It was the same music. Yes, it was Krishan. "Oh, how good to see you. I was waiting for the rains to stop so that I could come and see you," said Krishan. Krishan and Sita sat there on the piece of rock near the river. Krishan played the flute, Sita totally enjoying the lovely music and his company. "Will you go away again?" "Yes, I will, but I will keep coming now to meet you. And you can also learn to play the flute." "You play so well, I don't know how to play." No worries, I can teach you. Sita was very happy. She took the flute from him. Krishan said, sometimes the river is so angry and sometimes it is so kind. But we are all a part of it. We cannot do without it. The river is an integral part of our existence. And they became friends forever. Beautiful story, isn't it? What a wonderful, courageous child, spirited child Sita was, that she could face the fury of nature so courageously and not giving in to the adversities. She kept on helping her grandfather, moving on in life. The boy, Krishan, was a wonderful boy too, who believed in the power of nature and believed that human and nature were meant to be together. You can read this wonderful storybook, The Angry River by Ruskin Bond. You'll be amazed at the beauty. I will narrate many more stories of him. I'm sure you've loved the story. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and wait for Ammu till she comes again next time with another story. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.